The first call came at 6:12 a.m. I remember the time because I was already awake, staring at my phone, watching it vibrate on the nightstand like it was nervous. Unknown number, area code from downtown, expensive corporate, the kind of number that only calls when something has gone very wrong. I didn't answer. By the time I poured my coffee, there were 3 missed calls. By the time I sat down at the kitchen table, there was a voicemail. "Justin, this is Mark Feldman, counsel for..." I deleted it before he could finish the sentence. Because when a company's lawyer won't stop calling you after they forced you to resign, it means one thing. They finally realized they made a mistake. A very expensive one. And the funny part? I warned them, not out loud, not dramatically. I warned them the way I've always done everything in my career, quietly, in writing, buried in policy language no one reads until it's too late. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a 21-year career ended with me ignoring a lawyer before breakfast. For most of my life, I wasn't the kind of employee anyone noticed. That wasn't an accident. I'm Justin Mercer. For 21 years, I worked as a senior compliance and risk operations manager at a regional financial services firm that specialized in mid-market commercial lending. We weren't flashy. No Super Bowl ads. No billboards, just boring, regulated money moving through carefully documented channels. And I was the guy who made sure nothing exploded. My office was on the 4th floor, east side, 2 doors down from the fire stairwell. No window, beige walls, a desk that had been replaced 3 times while I stayed the same. On the wall behind me hung a framed flowchart from 2009, laminated, yellowing, mapping our original compliance escalation pathway. ID helped design it back when our legal department was 2 people and a shared printer. People joked that if you unplugged me, the company would fail its next audit. They weren't wrong. I knew every legacy system we'd ever used. I knew which approval workflows had been patched instead of rebuilt. I knew which reports regulators actually read and which ones only existed to satisfy checkboxes. I knew where the bodies were buried, not metaphorically, procedurally. Half the executives walking past my door used to report to me when they were analysts. I trained them, corrected their early drafts, fixed their mistakes before regulators ever saw them. And for 21 years, my reward was consistency, respect, and a deferred compensation plan that matured slowly, quietly, like a time bomb you want to go off. $380,000 tied to long-term compliance retention. Then Clayton Reeves arrived. He came in 3 years ago as our new COO, parachuted in from a fintech startup that burned through venture capital like kindling. Tall, expensive haircut, glass-walled corner office on day 1. His introductory email landed at 8:03 a.m., subject line. Operational modernization begins. I still have it. Clayton's whole thing was speed, agility, cutting dead weight. He talked about quarterly optics like they were oxygen, and from the first all-hands meeting, I knew exactly what I represented to him. Slow, careful, expensive, old. The past. At first, it was subtle. The first sign came disguised as efficiency. Clayton announced a streamlined approval workflow for compliance reports. It was framed as modernization, fewer bottlenecks, faster sign-offs. The kind of thing people clap for without reading the appendix. I read the appendix. 3 days after rollout, I logged into the compliance portal at 7:41 a.m. like I always did. Same password, same dashboard, but something felt lighter, fewer notifications. I clicked into the Permissions tab. My mandatory sign-off authority, gone. Not reassigned, not paused, removed. At first, I assumed it was an error. IT glitches happen, so I checked the audit log, filtered by user role, exported to CSV. Timestamp 02:17 a.m. 2 nights prior. Authorized by C. Reeves. No email, no conversation, no heads up. Just erased. That week, I stopped receiving regulatory distribution emails I'd been on for over a decade. The monthly risk digest, the pre-audit prep notices, even the internal memos labeled for compliance review. In meetings, Clayton started using a phrase that stuck in my head like a splinter. Legacy overhead. He said it casually, almost jokingly, but always while glancing in my direction. I didn't confront him. I did what I've always done when something feels off. I documented. Every Friday afternoon, before shutting down, I exported workflow permissions. Every Monday morning, I compared them. I saved copies of meeting agendas before and after edits. I started printing PDFs and writing the date on them with a pen, the old-fashioned way, just in case. Not because I planned revenge. Because in my line of work, you don't wait for smoke before checking where the exits are. The second escalation hit harder and publicly. We were in a regulatory prep meeting with external auditors. Conference room befrosted glass walls. A speakerphone in the center of the table that always buzzed faintly, like it was anxious. I was mid-sentence, explaining a mitigation control we'd added after a minor finding last cycle. And if you look at the exception handling, Clayton cut in. Justin, let's not get lost in hypotheticals. The room went quiet. He smiled at the auditors. What Justin means is we used to do it that way. We're moving faster now. Used to. He turned back to me. Your overcautious mindset is exactly what we're trying to evolve past. Overcautious. I felt my face heat, but I kept my voice even. Regulators don't evolve at the same pace as. Clayton waved his hand, noted. Then he did something worse. He announced that my compliance automation framework, the one I'd designed over 18 months, nights and weekends included, would now be owned by a junior manager named Eric. Nice kid, smart, loyal to Clayton. Just like that. After the meeting, I checked my performance review draft. Rating needs adaptation. In 21 years, I'd never seen that phrase next to my name. 2 days later, HR emailed me. Subject line, career alignment conversation. I stared at it for a long time. Because when HR uses that phrase, it doesn't mean they want to align with you. It means they want you to move. Quietly. And then came the meeting that changed everything. HR conference room, neutral art, a box of tissues no one ever uses. Clayton sat across from me, hands folded, sympathetic expression practiced in a mirror. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a resignation template, a severance offer, and documents that, at a glance, looked legitimate. At a closer look, they were criminal. Calibri 11-point font on a compliance memo that should have been Arial 10.5. Metadata timestamps that didn't align with system logs. Approval trails that jumped backward in time. Backdated. Forged. Clayton leaned back. This is the amicable option. I closed the folder slowly. Because in that moment, I understood something very clearly. They weren't asking me to leave. They were trying to make me disappear. And they had no idea who they were dealing with. I didn't say anything right away. I've learned that silence makes people nervous, especially executives who are used to controlling the tempo of a room. Clayton filled the space the way he always did, leaning forward, softening his voice. This doesn't have to be adversarial, Justin. You've had a great run here. 21 years is a long time. A long time, past tense. I opened the folder again, slower this time, like I was seeing it for the first time. The resignation letter was pre-filled. My name, my title, a date already selected, 2 days out. The language was clean, polite, final. I hereby tender my voluntary resignation. Voluntary? That word always does a lot of work in corporate America. Below it sat the severance offer, 12 weeks pay, continuation of health benefits through the quarter, a cheerful bullet point promising a positive reference. And then the quiet line near the bottom that mattered most. Acceptance of this agreement constitutes forfeiture of all deferred compensation. $380,000 erased with one signature. I looked up at Clayton. He was watching my face, gauging how much pressure to apply. And if I don't, I asked. He sighed like this was inconvenient for him. Then we move forward with performance-based termination. The documentation is already prepared. He tapped the folder. That would raise questions, regulatory ones. There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. I nodded slowly, like I was processing, like I didn't already see the font mismatch, like I hadn't clocked the metadata anomalies the second my eyes touched the page. HR sat quietly beside him, hands folded, eyes on the table. She didn't want to be here. That much was obvious. "I'll need time," I said. Clayton smiled. "Of course, 48 hours. As I stood to leave, he added almost casually, "Justin, this is the cleanest outcome for everyone." I walked back to my office, shut the door, and sat down. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the physical employee handbook. It lived in my bottom drawer, spine cracked, tabs sticking out like old bookmarks in a law library. I flipped past sections I could have recited from memory until I reached page 147. Section 93B. Paragraph 2. Any resignation tendered under threat of regulatory misrepresentation is null and void, and must be escalated to the Ethics Oversight Committee. I remembered writing that sentence. 12 years earlier, after a competitor got caught forcing out a compliance officer to bury a reporting failure. At the time, everyone thought the clause was excessive. Overkill, a hypothetical. I smiled for the first time in weeks. That night, I didn't sleep much. Instead, I opened my laptop and started assembling what I privately called the timeline. I exported system permission logs showing when my sign-off authority was removed. I pulled email headers proving when documents were actually created versus when they claimed they were approved. I took screenshots of font standards from our compliance style guide, last updated in 2016, still hosted on the intranet Clayton never bothered to read. I checked security retention policies. Executive floor, 14 days. Compliance archive hallway, 90 days. I made a note to myself about the blind spot near the scanning station, not because I planned to use it, but because knowing where people thought they weren't being watched mattered. By the time the sun came up, I had a folder labeled supporting timeline. Neutral, boring, impossible to argue with. At 10:03 a.m., I sent my resignation email. Subject line, formal notice. Body, her management representations regarding compliance exposure. Please accept this notice of resignation effective immediately. Attached is a supporting timeline for record completeness. I CC'd HR, legal, and the ethics oversight inbox no one had touched in years. Then I hit send. I went home before lunch. The calls started that afternoon. First HR, then legal, then an unfamiliar number with a downtown area code. I didn't answer, because when you follow the rules perfectly, you don't need to explain yourself. And somewhere in a glass-walled office, Clayton Reeves was starting to realize that forcing the human audit trail to resign might not have been the win he thought it was. By the next morning, my access badge no longer worked. I stood in the lobby at 8:14 a.m. holding a cup of burnt lobby coffee, swiping a piece of plastic I'd used for 2 decades. Red light, soft beep, denied. Security looked at me with the kind of expression reserved for funerals and layoffs, sympathetic, but careful not to get involved. "I think there's a mistake," I said calmly. The guard checked his tablet. "System says you're inactive." Inactive, not terminated, not exited, just paused, like they hadn't decided what to do with me yet. I nodded, thanked him, and walked out. That afternoon, the Ethics Oversight Committee convened for the first time in 7 years. I know that because the system generated an automated notice the moment the inbox was touched. Subject line, mandatory escalation triggered. Clayton didn't call me anymore after that. His lawyer did. Mark Feldman left 3 voicemails that day. The tone shifted with each one, professional, then concerned, then strained. "Justin, we just want to clarify a few things. Justin, this process may have been misunderstood. Justin, please call me back as soon as possible." I didn't, because while they were scrambling, I was watching the system do exactly what it was designed to do. Legal preservation orders went out automatically. No one could delete emails. No one could alter logs. External counsel was looped in per policy, people who didn't answer to Clayton. 2 days later, I got the calendar invite. Emergency ethics and legal review. Video conference, mandatory attendance. I joined on time. Clayton was already there, jaw tight, eyes flicking to the participant list. Board members, HR, external counsel, too many names he didn't control. The lawyer shared his screen. My supporting timeline filled the monitor. He didn't dramatize it, he didn't need to. He highlighted metadata timestamps, zoomed in on font discrepancies. Read section 93B aloud like he was reciting a verdict. Clayton tried to interrupt. "Please don't," the lawyer said gently. "This meeting is now part of a regulatory disclosure record." That was the moment Clayton's face changed. Not anger, not denial. Fear. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Administrative leave, termination for cause, regulatory inquiry opened. His lawyer called 3 more times. I never answered. My resignation was declared coerced and invalid. My deferred compensation was paid in full. They offered me a consulting exit package I didn't need. On my last day, I cleaned out my desk slowly, took the laminated flowchart off the wall, left the badge on the table. As I walked out, I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. So let me ask you, have you ever watched a company destroy its own future because it underestimated someone quiet? If you've been through something like this, drop it in the comments. And if you want more stories about justice catching up to the wrong people, make sure you subscribe. Some mistakes echo longer than others.